Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and today I've got 5 wide receivers that I see as league-winning players here down the stretch of this fantasy season. A third of the year is out of the way now. We're starting to approach these pivotal games and getting to the midpoint in the regular season for our fantasy football leagues. And as that occurs, we want to make sure that we're continuously building our rosters and making improvements on a week-to-week basis so that we can have the best rosters available come fantasy playoff time and come those crucial games down the stretch of this season. So, to jump on and become a part of the ride here, make sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't done so already and turn the bell on so you never miss a fantasy episode from the channel here. We're posting tons of content on a week-to-week basis. We try to be the most interactive fantasy channel out there and just be a great tool and resource for you each and every single week to make sure you have the edge and win those fantasy leagues this year. So click that subscribe button, turn the bell on, give this video a thumbs up so other fantasy players out there can find our content. And let's not waste any more time. Let's hit that intro and get straight in to our first league-winning wide receiver. Alrighty, here we go. So we also posted our league-winning running backs episode for that segment of the trade targets for this week. And something we talked about in that episode was that we're not focusing too much on the trade price for these players, more so the production that they can give us. So we'll obviously guide you through in those comments below if we think the price you're giving for these players is worth it in regards to the return we're expecting to get from these players throughout the course of this season. But again, not trying to focus overly on that trade price that you're going to have to go out and give for these assets in your lineups. But with that being said, Keenan Allen might be a player that you can get for a relatively respectable price right now. Through 6 games, his stats on paper and his target share in this offense look fantastic, but the raw output in the fantasy points department hasn't been quite where we expected it would be. Right now, he's a lower-end wide receiver 2 in terms of being the wide receiver 22 overall as we exit week 6 here and move into week 7. He's got 58 targets on the year, which is through 6 games, dang near 10 targets per game. That's an awesome marker to be at for any wide receiver or any player. If you're getting 10 balls thrown your way, chances are you're going to produce very dang good numbers, but they've been underwhelming. He's only got 1 touchdown this season. And in my eyes, a lot of that has to do with the inflated touchdown production of his teammate Mike Williams, who has 6 of them on the season already to this point. Now, he was held very quiet in that game against the Ravens, as was Keenan Allen, who had 5 receptions, 50 yards. But that team was an absolute train wreck and a disaster in that game. Heading into the bye week now in week 7, after a down performance, there might be the opportunity to trade and buy low for Keenan Allen. Again, not the focal point of today's episode, just a possibility out there. But when you're getting almost 10 looks a game, chances are that sooner rather than later, you're going to get on track. You're going to start to get the wheels rolling here. And Keenan Allen should pick up where he left off last season, which was being one of the best wide receivers in fantasy football and having one of the best floor values in PPR leagues of any of the wide receiver options out there in lineups on a week-to-week basis. Keenan Allen is uber dependable. He's very consistent. Again, not any player can avoid having a single down year in a season, and that applies to Keenan Allen as well here. So despite the fact that he hasn't really hit his ceiling once this year and he hasn't really been a player who has gone out there and been a game-breaking player, the looks and the opportunities, the volume he's seeing is something that I see as a very dependable force in his fantasy production. And moving forward, at some point that's got to take over because he's one of the best route runners in the league. Him and Justin Herbert clearly still have a very good chemistry together. And even if that touchdown production just upticks a little bit for the rest of the season, that's going to be something that makes a crucial difference and makes a big impact on fantasy lineups the rest of the way. So if you can buy low right now on one of fantasy's more targeted and more used players in his offense, Keenan Allen should have a great return for your fantasy lineups down the stretch of this season. Diontae Johnson. Now, this might be a tougher one to pry away from opposing fantasy managers because of how good the scoring has been for him, especially in the absence of Juju Smith-Schuster, and the progressions that if you've actually been tuning in and watching these Pittsburgh Steelers games, the development that we've seen from Diontae Johnson as a player through his route running, his utilization, and his overall role in this offense, it has all been fantastic across the board. And if Ben Roethlisberger can just hang in there in the pocket, we're going to see his ceiling just get elevated to a new level here. This is a player who was already the most targeted option in this Pittsburgh Steelers lineup before the loss of Juju Smith-Schuster for the season and for the loss of the year, or for the rest of the season. Chase Claypool is no joke, but the usage Diontae Johnson is seeing is not going to be matched by him. He is by far and away Ben Roethlisberger's favorite target outside of Najee Harris, who is actually leading this team in receptions, but Diontae ended up missing a game, so you've got a little bit of a skewed number there. Nonetheless, Najee Harris is a fantastic player and a really productive asset out of the backfield as well. Certainly another target to go look at the running back position, but again, his trade price is probably going to be astronomical because of how productive he's been as a workhorse player in both the rushing and receiving departments. But that's besides the point here. Diontae Johnson's use at the line of scrimmage, catching balls in a short yardage situation, if he's just simply running a little smoke route, running a hitch, whatever the case might be, he's getting the ball, he's getting run after catch, he's separating, his routes have really developed here, he's finding the end zone, and he's even starting to stretch the field again and become a downfield asset for Big Ben in the passing game. If he can just hang in there, hold the ball for a couple seconds, if this offensive line continues developing, Diontae Johnson is going to see more and more work. He's going to see more opportunities to take his ceiling to the next level in this offense. And by the end of the year, you could be looking at someone with top 12 wide receiver production because of how consistent his target share is in this offense, because he's clearly pulling away as the number one force in this passing offense. And the fact that he's already got a great floor he's working with, because again, he's catching numerous passes underneath on a week-to-week basis that at bare minimum in PPR leagues are getting you points just for the catch, and then whatever work he can get done after the fact is just adding fuel to the fire here. Diontae's got one of the best situations in fantasy football. He's been compared to the Antonio Brown-esque role in this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. But here in 2021, this offense has been completely revamped. Obviously, we saw it be expanded upon last year when they added in the short yardage passing situations and the short yardage passing offensive game plan and section of the playbook. Diontae's starting to involve even more deep route running and vertical passing threats into this offense and into his fantasy situation. That is causing him to get towards those Antonio Brown numbers. Now, he's not the same player as AB was obviously all those years ago for the Steelers team, but this is a dang impressive player who's giving us dang impressive numbers. Someone I'd absolutely want on my team because, again, the floor has been fantastic throughout 2020 and 2021. The only reason he hasn't reached the floor value has because he's tweaked something and had to leave a game early due to injury. If he starts running more vertical routes and continues to produce in that phase of the game and stretch the field, his ceiling is going to just continue to grow here and be a very, very dangerous weapon here late in the fantasy season. Stefon Diggs. This is a player that just has not been able to capitalize on opportunity this season. Diggs has clearly not been the same wide receiver he was from a fantasy scoring perspective in 2020 here into the 2021 season. And there's been various factors and various things that have played into that, but that's something that I think that eventually will be overcome here. Diggs is still an uber-talented fantasy weapon. He's still one of the best wide receivers in the league. Him and Josh Allen are still a picturesque wide receiver quarterback combo and duo here in this year's NFL. And Diggs just needs to simply produce on the opportunities that he's been given. And these two need to just connect on the deep balls that they've been fingertips away from pulling off or have had holding penalties pull back some of their biggest plays this year. He had a huge catch against Kansas City on Sunday night last week, and that was about it. Some of the other influences that have impacted his fantasy scoring at this point in the year has simply been the production of other players in this offense who are seeing less attention defensively because the number one focal point of defensive units when they're trying to stop this Bills passing attack is to slow down Stefon Diggs. So we're seeing guys like Emmanuel Sanders, Dawson Knox eating up touchdowns and deep passing plays because, again, Diggs is the focal point of this unit. But as the season progresses here, as everything kind of sorts itself out, Diggs is still getting the looks that we expect him to see on a week-to-week basis. He's still getting downfield shots from Josh Allen, and he's still seeing the proper amount of involvement and target share that we want him to see. Now, it has trended down a little bit this year from the 2020 season, but this is still, again, a super talented player with a super talented quarterback in a great offense that is putting up massive numbers. just the fact of how the season has played out to this point for the Bills has also played an impact. Now, you go back to that Kansas City game, while Stefon had the huge catch, it was 50-plus yards, he also was in a situation where the Bills were in control of that game and didn't need to really continue to pass the ball late. So you're running the football, you're winding the clock, not taking more shots downfield and giving Diggs opportunities to produce and score more points. He's got 10 or more targets in 3 out of the 5 games he's played so far this season. Tonight on Monday night, he's got the Tennessee Titans. He should have a great matchup here. He should have very impressive numbers. And again, unless Emmanuel Sanders, Dawson Knox, Cole Beasley eat up the majority of this work and produce in spite of Diggs, Stefon should be able to, again, see that weekly number we're looking for him to get at the target share department and produce the numbers that we expect from him, especially when we drafted him. He's been a very disappointing player at this point in the season, but the upside is great. The talent is there. The quarterback's there. He's got everything on paper checked off except for the production department, which is the issue we're seeing with a lot of these receivers. Talent will win out in time, or at least it should here. And when you're talking about, again, a player who's only got 1 touchdown this year and 100 or more receiving yardage game this season, that's something I think that Diggs should easily be able to overcome and start to get back into a groove with here down the stretch of the year. Terry McLaurin, another one of the game's absolute best players, best route runners, best wide receivers in the league. Now, maybe he's not up there in the top 5 department, but he is certainly, in terms of route running and field stretching ability, one of the most impressive wide receivers. The growth we've seen from him in his first 3 years has been super impressive. And the one thing that just hasn't quite been there, and this is a situation that might be a little bit more tough than a Stefon Diggs, because while he still has Josh Allen producing at an elite level and performing at the heights of his game, Terry McLaurin's stuck here with Taylor Heineke, who just hasn't been able to get it going for him. McLaurin's got 2 back-to-back down performances here in weeks 5 and 6. And in those games, he has 19 total targets. So you're talking about almost 10 targets per game, just under that, 9.5 targets per game in those 2 contests. And he's just not producing because the passes aren't accurate enough. He's not able to haul in some of these 50-50 balls. And they just don't have the chemistry put together yet. McLaurin right now has been boiled down to a boom or bust player, but in the boom performances he's had to this point in the season, it's easy to see why he's one of the league's best wide receivers and why he can continue to produce in that manner throughout the rest of the season. He's winning his routes with technique and route running savvy. He's making plays on the football, jumping up and making incredible catches, and he's separating from defenders when it counts. He just needs ball placement, and he needs accuracy and precision from the quarterback position. Ryan Fitzpatrick will eventually be working himself back into this offense. Hopefully that can help trend Terry's numbers upwards and hopefully stabilize the position a little bit. Obviously, Taylor Heineke's been able to hit Terry McLaurin's ceiling for him twice to this point, but we want to see it be done on a more consistent basis here. Hopefully, once Fitzmagic gets back into things here, he's also a gunslinger, a risk taker, all that good stuff. Hopefully, those numbers can stabilize for Terry a little bit more here and get more consistent throughout the rest of the season. But definitely right now, this is a player, again, not overly concerned about stock, but you could potentially buy low because of those back-to-back down weeks for McLaurin. And then Michael Thomas. How many of you guys, let's be honest, forgot Michael Thomas completely existed to this point in the season? Because we probably haven't heard his name once unless you're watching Saints broadcasts or a New Orleans Saints fan. MT's coming back here, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. The Saints are just coming off of a bye here in Week 6. And moving forward, after the first 6 games have been played, Michael Thomas is eligible to be returned off the PUP list. Once that hits, Michael Thomas should walk in and be the day 1 top target for Jameis Winston in this New Orleans Saints passing offense. He needs someone desperately bad to throw the football to on a consistent basis and be a reliable threat for him down the field. Marquez Callaway has kind of stepped up and gotten back to producing like we kind of expected after seeing the preseason hype and the plays he was making there. I wasn't overly sold that the production was going to translate into the season, and it's been very streaky to this point, but they still desperately need another true top pass catcher in this offense. You're talking about a player in Michael Thomas who was once upon a time the wide receiver 1 all the way back in that 2019 NFL season, saw a record number of receptions, put up great numbers. He's probably not the same player, if we're being completely honest at this point in time. Just watching him last year, even though he was banged up and injured, The eye test wasn't there. The production wasn't there. And having surgery this season that kept him out for so long into this year already, it's probably more than likely that his best days are behind him. But he can still be a dang productive player. You're going to get an increased average depth of target with Jameis Winston under center at the quarterback position, more downfield shots, opportunities to win contested grabs down the field, and again, just haul in chunk yardage situations, which you weren't really getting all that much with Drew Brees under center because it was a lot of slants and out routes, which is obviously where MT got the nickname Slant Boy and was harassed on social media for obviously a lot of people questioning the validity of that record-breaking season. Now, I'm not here to do that. MT has been awesome for fantasy purposes throughout his NFL career. He's been very productive, and he's got an NFL record, so who am I to question that? I'm actually here to encourage to go out there and send an offer for MT. Time is running out here. There's probably going to be some increased hype and buzz about Michael Thomas the closer and closer his return gets, and the more news starts to circulate about his anticipated return and him potentially hitting the field here within the next couple of weeks, the higher his trade price is going to be. So if there was a time to act, it would be now. I think we can get some really strong wide receiver 2 production out of him with Jameis Winston, again, under center, giving him more looks downfield and using him as a vertical passing weapon, in addition to the fact that the Saints just need someone stable to man that wide receiver core. All right, those are my 5 league-winning wide receivers to go out and buy here in Week 7 fantasy football action. If you've got any questions for me, again, drop those down in the comment section below, and I'll get back to as many of you as possible throughout the week. And thank you all so much for watching. Go check out some of the other videos I've posted today, and we'll continue to post throughout the rest of this week. And I'll see you there.